حدثنا أبي بن كعب عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعد الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Ubay ibn Ka'ab narrated to us that the Prophet ﷺ said, أن موسى قام خطيبا في بني إسرائيل, that Musa alayhi salam stood giving a sermon to the Israelites, the children of Israel. فَسُئِلَ أَيُّ النَّاسِ أَعْلَمُ, so he was asked, who among the people is the most knowledgeable or knows more? Not most knowledgeable, I would say more knowledgeable, right? And a lot of translations make that kind of quick jump and say most knowledgeable. The reason you can't say most is because it doesn't say al-a'lam, it's not superlative. A'lam without the lam ta'rif is comparative, it's not superlative, right? So ana, he said, I know more. And of course this means in the context of among these people, I know more, right? فَعَتَبَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ, so Allah reprimanded him, إِذْ لَمْ يُرَدُّ الْعِلْمُ يُرَدَّ الْعِلْمُ إِلَيْهِ, whereby knowledge was not attributed back to him. This red piece is actually sharh of the hadith. لَامَهُ وَخَاطَبَهُ مُخَابَطَةَ الْإِدْلَالِ وَطَالِبًا مِنْهُ حسن مراجعته ومذكرا له بما كرهه منه. That's all explanation, so I'll skip that part. Okay? That's just from a muhaddith. In any case, إذ لم يرد العلم أو يرد العلم إليه, you guys just did مضاعف, I believe. I was hearing some مد يمد مدا فهو ماد, right? So when you say الأمر منه for radda, right? So we rudda, ruddi, and urdud, right? So the majzoom version, the lightest version, could be yarudda and yaruddi and yardud, and that's why you find lam yarudda. You see, that's actually a live example of what you guys just did. It could have been lam yaruddi and lam yardud also. All three of those would have been acceptable. Anyway, so as whereby knowledge was not attributed directly to Allah, even in that, and here is a moment of pause for us to understand that the Prophet Musa is not being reprimanded the way you and I get reprimanded. Like if I, for example, say, some obnoxious person asks, Ustad, who knows more Arabic in the room or something? And you say, well, Ustad, Adam does. No, you should have said Allah knows better. No. In a given context, you can say who knows more. And clearly he didn't say who's the most knowledgeable. He just said among you, I'm more knowledgeable. But prophets have a higher standard than normal people. And even things that are actually completely harmless, for us to say, Allah will hold prophets to account for even those things. And this is actually a way of Allah distinguishing the standards He has for us from the standards He has for prophets. And this is the case even with our Prophet ﷺ. He is reprimanded in the Quran, he's corrected in the Quran over things that for any other human being would not be a sin. They actually wouldn't be a problem at all. The fact that he frowned at a blind person, for instance, and the word abasa means just a bulge on the forehead. He got frustrated as a blind person kept interrupting him in the middle of a conversation. And by the way, blind people are much better at hearing. One sense is gone, the other sense gets heightened. So he's fully aware that he's in the middle of another conversation. And the Prophet didn't say, stop, I don't like what you're doing, I'll talk to you in a second. He simply developed a bulge on his forehead, which is completely acceptable. By the way, even more acceptable because a blind person can't possibly be offended by a bulge on someone's forehead. That's not even possible. And yet the ayat came down, right? So they're held to a standard that we're not held to. And this is an example of that. And if you don't keep that in mind, then it just becomes casual. A thought creeps in the minds of a Muslim. Well, prophets made mistakes. They kind of messed up sometimes. No. Hold on a second. They are still ma'soom anil khata. And we have to hold ourselves to that belief when we read the text of the Quran too. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I talked to you about Sulaiman alayhi salam ever? Or Dawood alayhi salam? Because you know, when the case of Sulaiman and Dawood comes up in the Quran, it makes it seem like they made a mistake. Like it makes it seem like Sulaiman missed a prayer, for example, alayhi salam, because he was taking care of horses. That's the common way that part of the Quran, Surah Sad, is explained. Inni ahbabtu hubb al-khayr an dhikri rabbi, right? That I, as opposed to remembering my Rabb, I just took care of the horses. As a matter of fact, that tafseer is rejected by some classic, because I could not, there's no authentic narration that says that he missed prayer, first of all. And second of all, from the text of the Quran, it's very difficult to just accept that at face value, that he took care of horses and missed salah. And it's even more difficult to accept that because just a couple of ayat before, or the previous ayah I can't remember, he's awwab. He constantly keeps going back to Allah, repeatedly goes back to Allah. So he's already been described as someone who, like, unusually remembers Allah a lot. And in the very next ayah, we're to assume, based on the words عن ذكر ربي, that he missed prayer. And you know why they say he missed prayer? حتى توارت بالحجاب. توارت, what pronoun is that? توارت. She, right? But it doesn't say who she is. So they say until the sun disappeared behind the veil. And they assume it's the sun because it's feminine and the sun is considered feminine. The ayah doesn't say tawarat al-shams bil-hijab. Now tawarat, you guys just did sarf. What pattern is that? Tawarat. Ta'awana, isn't it? What is the feature of ta'awana? Each other. Is this? Can you say about the sun, a single entity, each other? The sun with something else. Actually, what he did was, he was taking care of the horses, he made battle horses, he made them march. He made them mush. And they go. And they go next to each other and they together disappear until he can't see them anymore. Tawarat is used for the horses that he was taking care of, until they went off into the sunset, in a sense. Okay? And actually the an dhikri rabbi is I love taking care of these horses inspired by my remembrance of my Rabb. I'm actually taking care of these horses because they're going to do the work of the deen. He's doing this fi sabilillah. Hatta tawarat bil hijab. So there's another reading of the same text which doesn't violate any authentic narration, except it violates what became very popular historically, just a popular interpretation. Yet it retains the integrity of Sulaiman alayhi salam, right? So once you have certain principles in your mind, like the integrity of prophets has to be retained, then the way you read the text becomes different. And the way you question text also becomes different. You know, we don't jump to conclusions about prophets alayhi salatu wasalam. Oh, anyway, there's one more thing about since Sulaiman came up. So when the horses came back, when horses come back and you're a horse trainer, what do? You check on them. You check on them. And they make it sound like he was so upset that he missed Salah, that when they came back, or when he went back to the horses, he said, bring me those horses, and he slaughtered all of them. Okay, he slaughtered all the horses. And Imam Razi comments all the opinions about those ayat, you know. فَتَفِقَ مَسْحًا بِالسُّوقِ وَالْأَعْنَاقِ. He began to mash, I won't translate mash yet, by the limb and the necks. By the limbs, the legs, and the necks. Okay? So most scholars say mashan bis-sikin. He passed over a knife over all of them. He sliced all of them. These horses made me forget my prayer. And then the scholars got into this whole debate about, well, if he slaughtered horses, he must have done this fi sabilillah, to give them as sadaqah, as dhabiha, as, you know, to give out. And because they couldn't fathom that a prophet would just, because, you know, what does it sound like at face value? He became upset and he lashed out at the horses. But you know, when you mess up, and especially if you miss a prayer, you don't blame anyone else. Who do you blame? Yourself. They say, well, no, he just saw his opportunity to slaughter horses and give them in charity. I'm like, that's not what the text is saying at all. I don't know how you. So Imam Razi said so, and I could not. I don't agree. I read Shawkani, I don't agree. Then I read Ibn Kathir, I was like, I can't agree. I don't know. Ibn Kathir, ya rahimakallah, I really love you, but I just can't. My conscience is not sitting well. I'm going to keep reading. And I keep reading it. And then Imam Razi. And Imam Razi says, I don't agree. I was like, oh, go on. And he says, if mash, the word mash, means to like slice, then you know, what do you do with famsahu bi ru'usikum wa aydikum in the Quran? Do, you know, when you can't find water, do masah over your heads and your hands. If salat time came, you didn't find water, you know. So I was like, such a gangster, Razi. That was awesome. And then he says, and also when you slaughter in Islam, originally slaughter is an act of mercy in Islam. So the way you slaughter is not by torturing an animal. You slaughter them in the neck. But the ayah says he sliced their legs and then the necks. Why would a prophet torture an animal? Slicing its legs and then its neck. He says then, actually the horses come back after being exhausted. He pats them on the leg and he strokes them on their neck, which is what you do when horses are exhausted and you're checking on them. It's describing what he was doing. And it's completely consistent with the text. And you don't have to imagine the word sikin, knife, in the text. Like, just integrity of prophets. It's not hard to retain. Just be Just commit yourself to the text, you know, with all due respect to the other opinions. With all due respect, this is more convincing. Wallahu ta'ala. Anyway, so it's another example of that. He said, I know more. And this is sometimes important for a teacher to say. This is also important to defend. You know, if, sometimes students are acting obnoxious. Why aren't we learning chapter 7? Why are we learning chapter 4? I know a little bit more than you. Just a little bit. I'm not saying I know everything, but can I just teach you right now? Okay, fine. Sometimes you do have to put a student in place. You have to remind them of their place. And he had to do that. And by the way, he's teaching Banu Israel. They kind of have a tendency to get out of line a little bit sometimes. So sometimes they have to be told, Ana a'lam. Just listen, will you? I know. And what kind of question is, Ayun nasi a'lam? What kind of question? You ask a prophet, who of the people is more knowledgeable? If you follow a prophet, isn't the answer to that question automatic? Isn't that a question you don't even need? And when a ridiculous question like that is asked, then you know what? It has to be spelled out. So he's not in the wrong for doing so. Anyway, Allah uses it as an opportunity to take him on a journey. And so, bala. فَقَالَ لَهُ بَلَا. Not at all. لِي عَبْدٌ بِمَجْمَعِ الْبَحْرَيْنِ. Of course, I do have a slave right at the merger of the two seas. هُوَ أَعْلَمُ مِنْكَ. He knows more than you. قَالَ أَيْ رَبِّي وَمَنْ لِي بِهِ. Yes, أي means yes, of course. And also another meaning is E and أي, similar words. رَبِّي وَمَنْ لِي بِهِ. وَرُبَّمَا قَالَ Sufyan is the narrator, أي رَبِّي وَكَيْفَ لِي بِهِ. Who is it that I can be with him? How can I get to him? Who is it and how can I get to him? Those are the two variations of the narration. قَالَ تَأْخُذُوا حُوتًا. He said, go take a fish. فَتَجْعَلُهُ فِي مِكْتِلٍ. And put him inside a miktil. Miktil means a basket. It's my notes. وِعَاءٌ يَشْبِهُ الْقِفَةِ. حَيْثُمَا فَقَدْتَ الْحُوتِ. Wherever you lose the fish, فَهُوَ ثَمَّهِ. وَرُبَّمَا قَالَ فَهُوَ ثَمَّهِ. Then exactly that's where it's going to be. And perhaps the narrator said not thamma but thammah, which is an appreciation of how sensitive narrators were. I can't remember if he said thamma or was there a little H at the end of when he was saying thamma, and he said thammah. So he says, since I'm not sure, I'm going to say, I think I heard Sufyan say thamma, but he may have said thamma. Now, وَأَخَذَ حُوتًا فَجَعَلَهُ فِي مِكْتَلٍ. So he took the fish and he put it inside the basket. ثُمَّ انطَلَقَ. So then he marched forward, he went ahead. وَهُوَ وَفَتَاهُ يُوشَعُ بْنُ نُونٍ. He and his young assistant, his young lad, Yusha, the son of Nun, Yusha ibn Nun, which the Bible calls Joshua. That's the biblical Joshua. حَتَّى إِذَا أَتَيَا الصَّخْرَ. Until they approached the boulder. So they approached this large boulder. وَصَغَارُ رُؤُوسَهُمَا. This is saga is a separate word, or should be sa'a? Sorry. وَضَعَ رُؤُوسَهُمَا. They placed their heads on the rock. Like they leaned at it and they just kind of passed out. Okay. فَرَقَدَ Musa. So Musa woke up. وَاضْطَرَبَ الْحُوتِ. And as he woke up, startled, the fish actually it got disturbed. تحرك مع أنه ميت. The narrator or the muhaddith is actually explaining, it started moving despite the fact that it's dead. وقيل كان مشويا. It's also been said that it was roasted already. It was already roasted fish and it just kind of started moving and فخرج. So it left. فسقط في البحر. So it fell into the sea. فاتخذ سبيله في البحر سربا. Then it took into the sea a path that looked like a mirage. I'll skip the... And it made a small opening, kind of like, the wake. It made a wake. So this makes it seem like they were, in fact, the narration makes it seem like they were walking inland and then it jumped into the beach. Okay? فَأَمْسَكَ اللَّهُ عَنِ الْحُوتِ جِرْيَةَ الْمَاءِ. So Allah held the fish on the flow of the water, meaning the fish didn't jump into the water, it went on top, like a jet ski kind of thing. So Allah held it on the surface of the water. فَصَارَ مِثْلَ الطَّاقِ. So it went like a spear, like it went forward like a spear. وَهَذَا مِثْلُ فَقَالَ هَكَذَا مِثْلُ الطَّاقِ. So and then the narrator says this is what a spear looks like, and he started kind of demonstrating visually. And so they say he did some visual demonstration, and they put that in the narration as well. فَانْطَلَقَا يَمْشِيَانِ بَقِيَّةَ لَيْلَتِهِمَا وَيَوْمِهِمَا actually should be. Anyway, so they both started moving forward. They went ahead, they didn't realize the rest of their night and the next day too. So 2 days worth like a whole 24 hours worth of travel. They continued. حتى إذا كان من الغد, until time came of the evening, early morning. قال لفتاه, he said to his young lad, آتنا غداءنا, bring us our lunch. لقد لقينا من سفرنا هذا نصبا. This is directly from the Quran. We've met with quite a bit of exhaustion. ولم يجد موسى النصب حتى جاوز حيث أمره الله. And Musa did not meet with any exhaustion until he had way past where Allah had commanded him to be. In other words, Allah did not give him any sense, any inclination that he's passed beyond where he's supposed to be. قال له فتاه, so his young lad said to him, أرأيت إذا وينا إلى الصخرة, did you see when we took refuge towards the boulder? فإني نسيت الحوت, then I had forgotten the fish rather. وما أنسانيه إلا الشيطان أن أذكره, and none but shaitan made me forget to mention it at the time that the roasted fish actually woke up and took off. واتخذ سبيله في البحر عجبا. Now that I think of it, it did take a really strange way into the sea. What's ajab about a fish in the sea? When it's dead, two, it's on the surface, not under. You know, it's going, you could see it going. فكان للحوت سربا ولهما عجبا. So the fish actually looked unreal. For the fish, there was this mirage-like looking wake that was there, and both of them found it strange. By the way, this hadith saying lahuma ajaban suggests that Musa saw it too. Because it's not lahu ajaban, it's lahuma ajaban, right? And that further corroborates ara'aita, didn't you see also? Because the fata, Yusha, is talking to Musa alayhi salam, suggesting Musa saw the fish take that road too, but Allah made them not remember, and then he attributes that to shaitan. تعجبا من أمره لأنه خارق للعادة. This is sharh, so we won't go into that. قال له موسى ذلك ما كنا نبغي. Musa said, that is what we were in pursuit of. فارتد على آثارهما قصصا. So they retraced their remnants, their footsteps, step by step. قصصا means step by step. رجع يقصان آثارهما. So they came back, tracing their steps. حتى انتهيا إلى الصخرة, until they ended up at the boulder where they originally were. فإذا رجل مسجن مغطى بثوب. مغطى is the sharh word. So when they saw a man completely wrapped up, enveloped in a garment, فسلم موسى. So Musa said salam to him. فرد عليه. So he responded to him. فقال, and he responded to him by saying, وأنا بأرضك السلام. And how do you people say salam where you come from? You just say salam, you don't introduce yourselves? So the man kind of was a little bit aggressive and said, this is it, this is all the salam you guys do where you come from? An-nabi ardika salam. And notice he doesn't say, wa an-nabi ardikuma as-salam. It's as though Musa alayhi salam has already grabbed the fatah and said, let me do the talking. And now he's getting put in his place a little bit. Qala ana Musa. I said, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. I'm Musa. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Musa. I'll introduce myself properly. Qala Musa bani Israel. Musa from the children of Israel. Musa of Bani Israel. It's mudaf ilayh. Musa bani Israel. Okay. Typically a proper name is not used as a mudaf, right? But you know, in Old English, I am David of Camelot or something. You know? So they use of instead of from. Like nowadays you say, I'm Mike from Chicago, like, you know. But you don't say I'm William of Dallas, like, you know. You don't do that, you say from. But in Old Arabic and old languages you use a lot of, right? So Musa of Bani Israel, قال نعم أتيتك لتعلمني مما علمت رشدا. I came to you so you could teach me from what you've been taught in terms of uprightness and guidance. قال يا موسى. He said, Musa, inni ala ilmin min ilmillah. I am committed and I'm committed to knowledge from within the knowledge of Allah. علمنيه الله لا تعلمه. That Allah has taught me that you don't know. So when they saw a man completely wrapped up, enveloped in a garment, فسلم موسى. So Musa said salam to him. فرد عليه. So he responded to him. فقال, and he responded to him by saying, وأنا بأرضك السلام. And how do you people say salam where you come from? You just say salam, you don't introduce yourselves? So the man kind of was a little bit aggressive and said, this is it, this is all the salam you guys do where you come from? An-nabi ardika salam. And notice he doesn't say, wa an-nabi ardikuma as-salam. It's as though Musa alayhi salam has already grabbed the fatah and said, Let me do the talking. And now he's getting put in his place a little bit. قال أنا موسى. I said, oh, okay, I get what you're saying. I'm Musa. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Musa. I'll introduce myself properly. قال موسى بني إسرائيل. Musa from the children of Israel. Musa of Bani Israel. It's mudaf ilayh. Musa Bani Israel. Okay. Typically, a proper name is not used as a mudaf, right? But you know, in Old English, I am David of Camelot or something. You know, so they use of instead of from. Like nowadays, you say I'm Mike from Chicago. Like you know, but you don't say I'm William of Dallas. Like you know, you don't do that. You say from. But in Old Arabic and old languages, you use a lot of. Right? So Musa of Bani Israel. قال نعم. أتيتك لتعلمني مما علمت رشدا. I came to you so you could teach me from what you've been taught in terms of uprightness and guidance. قال يا موسى. He said, Musa, إني على علم من علم الله. I am committed and I'm committed to knowledge from within the knowledge of Allah. علمنيه الله لا تعلمه. That Allah has taught me that you don't know. Allah has taught me that you don't know. وأنت على علم من علم الله. And you are committed to knowledge, some knowledge, from within the oceans of knowledge of Allah. علمكه الله لا أعلمه. That Allah has taught you that He hasn't taught me. I don't know it. Which means Allah has given you Torah, Allah has given you revelation. I haven't received that revelation. But Allah has taught me some other things that you've never learned. قال هل أتبعك. So he says, can I follow you? قال إنك لن تستطيع معي صبرا. You're certainly not going to be capable of patience with me. وكيف تصبر على ما لم تحط به خبرا. And how can you be patient over something you haven't encompassed, you don't have full news of? In other words, I was telling you before, his assessment of Musa alayhi salam is that he cannot be patient over partial information. Okay? Which goes back to actually one of the earlier incidents in the life of Musa alayhi salam too. All the information isn't there and he became upset at the Israelite being attacked by the Qibti. Right? And he took action and he wasn't able to bear just standing there and watching. Right? Anyhow, so the narrator says from here, لم تحد به خبرا قال ستجدني إن شاء الله صابرا ولا أعصي لك أمرا فانطلقا. All of that until they wrecked the ship. He recited all of that. The Prophet recited all of those ayat in this place. فانطلقا, so they moved forward. يمشيان على ساحل البحر, walking along the coast of the sea. فمرت بهما سفينة, so a ship passed by them. كلموهم, they called out to them, spoke to them. أن يحملوهم, that they can be boarded on. Can we board on to your ship, guys? فعرفوا الخضر, so they recognized Khidr. This is the first time we're hearing his name. So they recognized Al-Khidr. فحملوه بغير نول, so they let him board on without any nawl. Nawl means compensation, any fee. Okay. فلما ركبا في السفينة جاء عصفور. So when they boarded onto the ship, a bird came, a sparrow, literally a sparrow came. فوقع على حرف السفينة, so it sat at the very edge, at one of the bottom edges of the ship. فنقر في البحر نقرة أو نقرتين, and it pecked into the ocean once or twice, like dipped its beak in the water once or twice. قال له الخضر يا موسى. So Musa alayhi salam, Khidr said to Musa, ما نقص علمي وعلمك من علم الله إلا مثل ما نقص هذا العصفور بمنقارة من البحر. The knowledge you and I have from within the banks of knowledge of Allah hasn't diminished what Allah still has with Him that we don't have, except like this, the droplet that this bird has just pecked from the ocean. That's all we have. So now, you know, the story began with I know more, right? And now he's met someone who knows more. And the one who knows more says, you know, put together, we know nothing. Put together, we really don't know anything. Okay? And there's this humility that's coming with knowledge. I'm reminded of Shah Waliullah Dehelwi's famous quote, rahimahullah, when he would graduate students, he would tell them the same thing every time. He would say, when a tree bears fruit, its branches lower. When a tree bears fruit, its branches lower. And his way of saying, when you've acquired knowledge, which is fruit, that it should actually bring you humble, should bring you down, not bring you up. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us of those. So he says, we don't really know anything. إلا مثل ما نقص هذا العصفور بمنقارة من البحر. All of a sudden, so now there's this sweet spiritual lesson. We don't know anything except this little droplet. There's this imani kind of experience, and out of a sudden, he grabbed the axe, فَنَزَعَ لَوْحًا. And you know where the bird was, right at the brink, where the water is? So you know the ship is like shaped like this. So the front of it is called the qaddum, from quddam, the very front. That's where the water gushes and hits against the ship, right? So he says immediately he grabbed the axe and he yanked out a board. قَالَ فَلَمْ يَفْجَأْ Musa. Musa was not even shocked yet. إِلَّا وَقَدْ قَلَعَ لَوْحًا. So he didn't know, why is he axing the board? Maybe he's doing something I don't understand, maybe some new kind of salah, I don't know what he's going to teach me. He's still not surprised yet, but once he axed it, he loosened it, he yanked it out. And it's at that point that Musa alayhi salam, it hit him, what's he doing? What is he doing? So وَقَدْ قَلَعَ لَوْحًا بِالْقَدُّمْ فَقَالَ لَهُ Musa. Musa said to him, مَا صَنَعْتَ? What have you done? قَوْمٌ حَمَلُونَ بِغَيْرِ نَوْلٍ. A group of people let us board onto their ship. They didn't even charge us anything. عَمَدْتَ إِلَى سَفِينَتِهِمْ. You had evil intent to destroy their ship. عَمَدَ, to purposely do harm to something. عَمَدَ. Ta'ammud actually means intentful behavior, right? So you intentionally did this to their ship. فَخَرَقْتَهَا لِتُغْرِقَ أَهْلَهَا. You damaged it so you can sink its inhabitants or the people on board. لَقَدْ جِئْتَ شَيْئًا إِمْرًا. You've done something really terrible. Imr, one of the words in Arabic for terrible. We'll get into it when we go ayah by ayah. قَالَ أَلَمَّ قُلْ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Didn't I say that there's no doubt about it? You're not going to be able to bear patience with me. قَالَ لَا تُؤَاخِذْنِي بِمَا نَسِيتُ. He said, don't take me to account over what I forgot. وَلَا تُرْهِقْنِي مِنْ أَمْرِي عُسْرًا. And don't lean on me and be difficult on me in the decision that I made. فَكَانَتِ الْأُولَى مِنْ مُوسَى نِسْيَانًا. So the first excuse that Musa alayhi salam presented in his defense was forgetfulness. The first line of defense was forgetfulness. فَلَمَّا خَرَجَا مِنَ الْبَحْرِ. Then when they both came out of the sea, مَرُّوا بِغُلَامٍ يَلَعْبُوا مَعَ الصِّبْيَانِ. They passed by a boy that was playing with other little children. فَأَخَذَ الْخَضِرُ بِرَأْسِهِ فَقَلَعَهُ بِيَدِهِ هَكَذَا وَأَوْمَأَ سُفْيَانُ بِأَطْرَافِ أَصَابِعِهِ كَأَنَّهُ يَقْطَفُ شَيْئًا. This is part hadith, part describing how Sufyan narrated the hadith. He visually explained what was happening. He said he grabbed the kid by his head and he moved his hands out like this and he just plucked like he was plucking something. Like he yanked the kid's neck and snapped his neck. That's what he did. It's very disturbing. And then فَقَالَ لَهُ مُوسَى قَتَلْتَ نَفْسًا زَكِيَّةً بِغَيْرِ نَفْسٍ. What have you done? You killed a pure person, a pure soul, without him having committed murder. You've done something completely unheard of. قَالَ أَلَمَ قُلْ لَكَ إِنَّكَ لَن تَسْتَطِيعَ مَعِيَ صَبْرًا. Didn't I iterate to you that no doubt you are not going to be able to bear patience with me? قَالَ إِن سَأَلْتُكَ عَنْ شَيْءٍ بَعْدَهَا فَلَا تُصَاحِبْنِي. He said, if I were to ask you anything after this, after it, don't accompany me. قَدْ بَلَغْتَ مِن لَدُنِّي عُذْرًا. You have now reached whatever udhr, whatever excuse on my end, you are fully justified in letting me go, basically. That's what udhr means. Udhr in Arabic, not just used for excuse like al-ma'adhiru makadhib. I'm reminded of the words in Surah Al-Mursalat, udhran aw nudhra, right? Those words are very powerful because Allah takes an oath, right? He takes an oath by winds, winds that do different kinds of things, winds that can pluck trees out of the earth, and then winds that bring clouds. And the contrast is that winds can kill and winds can give life, right? And as a result, winds are a means for human beings to reflect that the creation and the gifts Allah has given you can be a source of your destruction and can be a source of your benefit. Water is life, but water can kill. Wind gives life, wind can kill. Revelation, if benefited from, gives life. Revelation, if disregarded, will kill. You know, Allah says, like a narration says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْفَعُ بِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ أَقْوَامًا وَيَضَعُ بِهَا آخَرِينَ أو بِهِ آخَرِينَ. Because of this Quran, Allah raises some nations and puts some nations down. That's because of the word of Allah too, right? So as a result of that, He says, فَالْمُلْقِيَاتِ ذِكْرًا. As a result, these winds, they always bring you into contact with something to reflect on, something to remember. And then He says, عُذْرًا أو نذرة. And udhran there specifically as enough of an excuse of a case against you. Meaning whatever happens to you after winds were sent to you, on Judgment Day, if no revelation was sent to you, nothing else was given to you, Allah has the right to ask you, didn't I give you wind? Wasn't that enough to ponder on? That was enough of a case against you. Udhran. That's actually the implication of udhran in that ayah. Udhran aw nudhra. So when Musa alayhi salam says udhr, he's saying, you've got all the justification you need to expel me from this university. Right? أعذرك في مفارقتي لأنك بلغت النهاية في التنبيه. فانطلقا. So they moved forward. حتى إذا أتيا أهل قرية استطعما أهلها, until they approached the inhabitants of a town where they both seek food from them. استطعما أهلها. يعني طلب منهم الطعام ضيافة. They asked for some food from them just out of hospitality. فأبوا أن يضيفوهما. So they refused to show them any hospitality. فوجد فيها جدارا يريد أن ينقض. So they found in it a wall that wants to tip over. مائلا, tipping. Now مائلا is his comment. وأومأ بيده هكذا. Then they say that Sufyan made a gesture, or the Prophet made a gesture so and so. وأشار سفيان كأنه يمسح شيئا إلى فوقه. And Sufyan made a gesture as though he is passing his hand over something above him, like a wall that wants to tip over. I imagine he did something like this. Okay. Now, فلم أسمع سفيان يذكر مائلا إلا مرة. But you know, I've heard Sufyan say this story multiple times. I've only use the word مائلا, leaning, only once. So the narrator is even sensitive enough to say, by the way, he only used the word ma'il that one time. But I figured I should write it in. قال قوم أتيناهم. Musa alayhi salam said, a group of people, we approached them. فلم يطعمونا, they didn't give us food. ولم يضيفونا, they weren't even very hospitable to us. عمدت إلى حائطهم, you purposely went towards their wall, and you intentfully, with full consciousness, built it up for them. لو شئت لاتخذت عليه أجرا. Had you wanted, you could have been compensated for it. You could have taken from because of it some compensation. قال هذا فراق بيني وبينك سأنبئك بتأويل ما لم تستطع عليه صبرا. This is the parting between you and myself. I will now inform you of the interpretation of what you couldn't bear patience over. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وددنا أن موسى كان صبر. Musa alayhi salam said, we wished that Musa alayhi salam remained patient. فَقَصَّ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا مِنْ خَبَرِهِمَا. So Allah would have told us more about what happened with them. So Allah wanted to know more. And what's really beautiful here, خَبَرِهِمَا, some attribute this to, we could have learned more about their journey and they could have learned more. And some say that the hima here refers to the two kids, like he wanted to know about their well-being. You know, the khabarihima, because I wanted to know what happened with those children. أي ما قد يقع منهما أكثر مما ذكر. What more could have occurred? قال سفيان قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يرحم الله موسى لو كان صبر لقص علينا من أمرهما. May Allah show mercy to Musa alayhi salam. Had he been patient all along, actually, we would have been told much more from their affair. They could have spent a lot more time together and he could have learned a lot more. One of the morals of the story from the hadith perspective is that a student will lose patience. And when they lose patience, their journey to learning more will be cut short. They could have benefited a lot more, they could have gotten a lot more, but their temperament kept them. So, you know, it's not only one's intelligence and one's capacity to learn and memorize and internalize that plays a role in one's journey in learning, but also one's temperament. You know, one's patience with their teacher and one's ability to accept, look, I don't understand everything. And if you tie the themes of the story as narrated in this hadith together, you come away with some very beautiful conclusions. In the beginning, you're told that everything we know is just a drop in the ocean, right? But when you see things you can't understand, at that point to remember, I cannot fully comprehend what's happening here because what I know is a drop and the reality of this is the ocean, right? At that point, it's hard to remember. At that point, I saw what happened. I know what happened. How could this be the case? Like at that point, you don't want to accept that you don't know the whole story. It's too difficult to see something, to have some knowledge, and accept that you don't know everything. That's really, really hard to do. In my last khutbah, Colleyville, I actually spoke along these lines. It's another, and that's more, it's not even about learning, the journey of learning, but about passing judgment, which is related, right? You don't know the entire story. There's always somebody who knows more, even if you've seen something happen in front of your eyes. And that's why even the ayah, فَوْقَ كُلِّ ذِي عِلْمٍ عَلِيمٍ, above everybody who possesses knowledge is somebody, a knowledgeable one, right? And a fully knowledgeable one. Alim could be about kamal, fully knowledgeable. Someone who has the full story. That is part of the ayah in which Yusuf alayhi salam had hidden the cup in his brother's bag. And he had done so, if you didn't know the whole story, you would think he schemed, he lied, he conspired, he falsely arrested. Like there's a lot of bad conclusions you'd arrive at. And don't say Yusuf, put somebody else in his place and say one of the students put one of their wallets in somebody else's bag and got them arrested. You would not find that to be an acceptable course of behavior. We would all pass judgment, don't try it. As an attempted tafseer of the ayah. Please don't try that. But if you did do that, it would be really easy to say, this is what happened. And if somebody says, you don't know the whole story. Yeah, you're always saying you don't know the whole story. It's on camera. You saw it. We know what happened, So when you see something, it's just too hard to accept. I don't know what's behind the scenes. I don't know what prompted this behavior, And that's kind of along the lines of what happens in this story. What's happening in front of him is so intense, it is at that time to just take a step back and say, I need to take this in and not react. And the last thing I'll tell you is from a thematic perspective, because we'll go ayah by ayah next. I gave you the story's overview last time and this narration today. One thematic thing I want to share with you, how is this connected to the fitan? Because the surah is connected to the fitan of the future, the trials that the ummah will face in its future. One of the most difficult things that the ummah will have to learn is to face harsh realities. And every time we face them, we're going to say, why is this happening to us? What's the point of this? This is so unfair. And we're going to get overwhelmed with grief and frustration. And it is at those points that we're going to have to say, just like the mentor to Musa alayhi salam was telling him, you just don't have enough patience to bear. You're just, you see an injustice around you and you just question immediately, why is this happening? We need to fix this right away and take action right away. Hold on. You need to understand that when these fitan are happening, and the Prophet ﷺ would describe towards the end of times, the blood of Muslims is going to be shed and injustice will be widespread. And as a result, by the way, because of this injustice, I can't believe this happened in my own lifetime. When I was first learning about Surah Al-Kahf in the 90s, right? In the 90s when I was first learning about it, one of my teachers told me, that a time will come, the Prophet would describe, a time will come where people will be, because of these fitan, his analysis was because of these fitan, people will start questioning their iman altogether. Like things on the Muslims will be so difficult, somebody might even come along and say, if we were really on the committed to the truth, and Allah is on our side, all of this wouldn't be happening to us. I don't even want to be Muslim because all of these things that are happening to us. And I could not imagine when that would ever be the case. Like, things are bad, but it ain't that bad. Come on. That things are going to be bad and people are just going to say, I don't even want to be Muslim anymore. Things were like, I don't want to tell people I'm Muslim because I want to fit in. There used to be that. I don't want to look too Muslim. There used to be that. But I don't want to be Muslim. I couldn't imagine. Now when you say this, you don't have to imagine. You just have to open your email inbox. It's crazy. This happened within no time at all. No time at all. Subhanallah. So it's a real thing. It's a real thing that somebody's faith gets challenged when they see a lot of trials around them. And the first remedy to that in this particular piece of the surah is humility of knowledge. Just one recognizing I don't understand everything and being content with that and not losing patience over that. May Allah Azza wa Jal make us among the patient and among those who Allah continues to open the doors of wisdom for. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum.